Every soul reaches a crossroads where the familiar self begins to dissolve, not with fanfare, but with a quiet unrest. This is the subtle birth of a revolution within, a silent rebellion against the boundaries of identity that once felt safe. It does not thunder into existence. It seeps in like a soft, persistent current, shifting the sands beneath your feet. This transformation stirs discomfort, not inside you, but among those orbiting your life. They sense a shift before you do, a tremor that unsettles their own equilibrium. Suddenly, the laughter feels forced. The words carry unseen weight, and the once effortless connections grow taut and fragile. The world around you hesitates, uncertain if the person they knew remains. Why are you different? They ask, though they fear the answer. Their question is a mirror reflecting their own stagnant waters, trembling at the ripple your growth creates. You find yourself standing firm at the edge of change, confronted by expectations that you recede, that you become smaller again, folding back into familiar shapes. But this is the genesis of an unbreakable mind, the courage to expand relentlessly, unapologetically, even when it isolates you. The true revolution is not the loud proclamation of change, but the steadfast refusal to return to confinement. In your transformation, you become a living testament to possibility, a silent reminder that growth is not a betrayal, but a brave reclamation of self. The discomfort you cause is the shadow of their own fear of change, and in that shadow, your power quietly grows. There is a natural human impulse to flee from chaos, a deep-seated desire to escape discomfort by drowning it in distractions, seeking instead the soothing embrace of equilibrium. Most cling tightly to familiar patterns, preferring the comfort of what is known over the challenge of growth, the safety of unquestioned routines rather than the perilous journey of self-exploration. In this surrender to ease, they confuse peace with power, comfort with wisdom, and in doing so, they relinquish the very possibility of unlocking their highest potential. Yet, the truly formidable mind, the one that inspires awe and even fear in others, is not afraid to waltz with chaos. It understands suffering not as a barrier to be circumvented, but as the crucible in which genuine strength is forged. It welcomes the raw discomfort of uncertainty, the unsettling agony of dismantling once cherished certainties, and the dizzying revelation that meaning is not bestowed upon us by the universe, but must be carved out by our own hands. This is where authentic power germinates, not in controlling the world around us, but in the alchemy of turning inner turmoil into unwavering resilience. When you can confront your deepest anxieties, sift through your darkest secrets, and interrogate your most treasured beliefs without retreating, you cultivate a fortress within, one impervious to the tides of external opinion and circumstance. The chaos swirling inside is not your adversary. It is the primal clay from which greatness takes shape. Each doubt faced head-on, rather than evaded, every contradiction embraced instead of denied, every fragment of suffering transformed into insight becomes a foundational pillar supporting a mind unshakable by outer forces. Others sense this strength and fear it, not because you pose a direct threat, but because your courage reflects what they have long forsaken within themselves, the bravery to face the unknown lurking in their own depths. Your fearless dance with chaos illuminates a path they dared not tread, and your presence stirs in them a haunting awareness of their own dormant potential, the possibilities they have chosen to ignore. A mind shaped and tempered in the fires of chaos does more than survive adversity. It flourishes because of it. It is anti-fragile, gaining strength from hardship rather than merely resisting it. Every obstacle becomes a doorway to growth. Every setback, a lesson in deeper understanding. Every pang of suffering, a seed for transformation. This is the profound and daunting insight gifted by Nietzsche. The imperative that we become the architects of our own being. True strength is not found in shunning the difficult questions, but in living them fully. It is not birthed in the pursuit of comfort, but in the embrace of the creative uncertainty that defines our existence. When you cultivate such a mind, its power resonates far beyond your own awareness. Others feel its magnetic force before they can name its source. They recognize in you a masterful alchemist, one who transmutes chaos into strength, pain into wisdom, and uncertainty into fertile ground for creation. And yes, this power unsettles them, not because you endanger their security, but because you embody a truth they fear to face, that they, too, could choose to evolve into something far greater than they have allowed themselves to become. This is why the strong mind invokes fear. It is a living symbol of freedom, the most profound and terrifying possibility we can ever encounter. Before we continue this journey into the subtle truths of human behavior, please take a moment to support this space of insight and reflection by subscribing to the channel. Your presence here helps us continue creating content that nurtures self-awareness, emotional clarity, and spiritual growth. Thank you. Part 3: The Void and the Birth of Responsibility. At a certain profound juncture in the unfolding of human consciousness, the structures that once upheld our understanding begin to crumble. Nietzsche named this epoch the death of God, a phrase that transcends mere disbelief in a divine figure. It marks the disintegration of every external pillar we once leaned upon for meaning, direction, and moral certainty. This moment is both devastating and illuminating. It is the realization that no celestial authority will ever sanction your choices. No preordained destiny awaits to guide your journey. No force beyond yourself will lift the burden of your existence. You stand alone, confronting the vast emptiness where once resided the comforting illusions of external validation. Faced with this abyss, the majority recoil in terror. They grasp at new idols, clutching desperately to fresh dogmas, ideologies, or social currents in a vain attempt to recover the lost certainty. They exchange one set of shackles for another, perpetually seeking an outside framework to supply the meaning they have yet to cultivate within. But for the mind forged in true independence, this moment of abandonment becomes the ultimate blessing. It is an invitation, no, a summons, to step into the role of the sole architect of one's own existence. With the collapse of every outside authority, what remains is raw, unfiltered freedom, daunting in its scope, limitless in its possibility. Here, genuine responsibility takes root, not the passive adherence to decrees from on high, but the profound, exhilarating task of fashioning the very rules by which you will live. Every belief, every principle, every fragment of meaning must now be sculpted by your own conscious will, emerging from the deepest wells of your individuality. This immense freedom crushes those unready to bear it. They recoil at the knowledge that their joy, their purpose, their significance are their own to claim or deny. They cling to the familiar chains of external decree, preferring the safety of imposed meaning to the perilous liberty of self-creation. Yet, for those who courageously embrace this responsibility, a sublime transformation unfolds. Meaning forged through deliberate choice wields a power unattainable by inherited dogma. Values deliberately chosen possess a gravity that addicts never achieve. Purpose born of personal conviction blazes brighter than any assigned role ever could. This metamorphosis unsettles others profoundly. It shines a stark light on their surrender, their abdication of ownership over their own lives. Your readiness to author your own meaning exposes their dependence on borrowed narratives. Your acceptance of radical freedom unsettles their comfort in the familiar servitude of external approval. When you wholly embrace responsibility, not only for your deeds, but for the very fabric of your identity, you become a threat to every system built upon conformity. You embody the possibility that others too might seize their freedom, reject the need for permission to be authentic, and rise as creators rather than mere consumers of meaning. In this awakening lies both peril and promise. To live as your own sovereign demands courage, yet it offers the profoundest liberation imaginable. The chance to live a life shaped not by inherited shadows, but by the radiant light of your own conscious creation, becoming the overman. From the ruins left behind by shattered certainties, Nietzsche imagined the rise of a figure unlike any before. The Übermensch, or overman, not a biological superior, but a being who has transcended the chains of external validation to forge meaning from the very core of their own existence. This overman is not born into greatness, but is painstakingly crafted through the relentless fire of radical self-responsibility. Far from the caricature of a ruthless conqueror, popular culture sometimes conjures. The Übermensch is something infinitely more unsettling to the established order. A person wholly autonomous in their creation of value, utterly indifferent to the approval of others, who embraces life in its full, unfiltered chaos and suffering with a resolute yes. Picture an individual who carries their own climate within them, walking through the world unaffected by the emotional weather swirling around others. This is someone who does not look outward for permission to think, for validation to feel, or for approval to act. Instead, they have become their own wellspring of strength, the origin of their own meaning, the ultimate measure of their own worth. This independence strikes fear into the hearts of many because it starkly reveals their own emotional dependency. Most people live as parasites on the validation of others, harvesting their self-worth from external feedback, their purpose from inherited narratives, and their identity from collective approval. The Übermensch exposes this reliance as a conscious choice, one that most dare not make. But the overman's detachment from external approval is not born of arrogance or disdain. It springs from a profound wholeness. Engaging with the world from a place of internal abundance rather than scarcity, they give freely, not in anticipation of reward, but because their fullness naturally overflows. Such a person crafts their own ethical framework, not out of nihilistic rebellion, but from a profound understanding of what nourishes life, encourages growth, and fosters flourishing. They become sovereign lawmakers unto themselves, not by rejecting law altogether, but by outgrowing the need for externally imposed rules. The path toward becoming the Übermensch is not a final destination, but an ongoing journey of self transcendence. It demands the courage to dismantle every comforting illusion, to confront each craving for external validation, and to choose authenticity over the deceptive security of conformity. Every step away from dependence, every act of meaning creation rather than consumption, becomes a quiet revolution, an assertion of freedom in a world designed to perpetuate submission. Those around you sense this profound shift long before they can articulate it. They feel the change in gravitational pull from someone who no longer seeks their approval, no longer asks for their permission, no longer depends on their judgment. This radical independence does not breed cruelty or indifference. It cultivates freedom. And freedom, when fully embodied, is the most awe-inspiring and frightening force we can encounter. The Übermensch terrifies, not because they dominate others, but because they embody what each of us might become. Should we find the courage to accept total responsibility for the authorship of our own existence? The sacred solitude of strength, there exists a profound silence that settles over those who commit themselves to the pursuit of true strength, not the easy quietude born of conformity or complacency, but the deep, often unsettling solitude that comes from outgrowing the social worlds that once shaped and contained them. This solitude is an unexpected toll exacted by the evolution of consciousness, a widening gulf between the self you are becoming and the world that no longer recognizes or understands you. At first, this loneliness whispers softly. Conversations that once sparked connection now ring hollow and wear you down. The endless cycles of complaints, gossip, and superficial chatter that make up much of everyday interaction reveal themselves as little more than spiritual junk food, momentarily filling, but leaving your deeper hunger untouched. You find yourself nodding along politely, while inside, a quiet alienation grows. This is not misanthropy or bitterness. It is the inevitable result of growth. To think independently, to question with unflinching honesty, to forge your own meaning. These awakenings make the easy acceptance of inherited beliefs and shallow opinions intolerable. You cannot unknow the truths you've come to see, cannot unexpand the boundaries of your consciousness, cannot retreat back into the narrow comfort of your former self. And as the solitude thickens, a sobering realization dawns. The qualities you now embody, your courage to face uncomfortable realities, your readiness to dwell in uncertainty, your relentless questioning, these make you a stranger to many. For those who have built their sense of identity on the firm ground of comforting illusions, your presence is a challenge, a disturbance that exposes the limits they have chosen for themselves. Yet, within this seeming isolation lies a paradox too often overlooked. This solitude is not emptiness, but plenitude. When the need for external approval dissolves, when the hunger for others' validation fades, what emerges is a richness born entirely from within, a wellspring of self-sufficiency that no social accolade can match. To stand alone and be fully at home in one's own company is to discover the most steadfast and enduring companion you will ever know. In this sacred solitude, free from the cacophony of external demands and imposed identities, you begin to hear the subtle, persistent whisper of your authentic self. The strong learn to embrace this solitude, not as exile or punishment, but as a profound privilege. They recognize that every significant leap in consciousness demands a period of separation from the crowd, a solitary journey into the wilderness of self-discovery. This kind of solitude unsettles others deeply because it reveals a terrifying possibility. the capacity to be whole without their approval, to be content without their recognition, to carry meaning without their endorsement. Your comfort in your own company casts into sharp relief their own fragile dependencies, their unspoken need for the validation they so desperately seek. In the quiet of your solitude, you become unshakable. Here lies the silent power of the strong, complete unto themselves, free in the profoundest sense, and utterly undeterred by the opinions of the world, the tyranny of the average, confronting collective mediocrity. There exists a silent, relentless force, far more insidious than failure, more immobilizing than hardship, the quiet tyranny of collective mediocrity. It is this unyielding conformity, this invisible consensus to remain average, that stifles the blossoming of true individual greatness. Society has evolved intricate and often invisible systems designed to ensure that no one ventures too far beyond the accepted norms, that no mind probes too deeply, that no light dares to outshine the rest. These forces do not rely on blunt coercion or overt control. Instead, they wield a subtle yet devastating influence, a persistent murmur echoing through every interaction. Conformity is safety. Deviation is peril. This pervasive whisper seeps into our very thoughts, molding desires and fears alike until we begin to doubt the value of our own uniqueness. Collective mediocrity masks itself behind a facade of virtue. It speaks in the gentle tones of humility, even as it quietly erodes ambition. It cloaks itself in realism, methodically dismantling dreams under the guise of practicality. It extols the necessity of belonging, all the while systematically extinguishing the sparks of individuality that threaten its fragile homogeneity. Its power lies in countless small, seemingly innocent compromises. Each concession feels reasonable in isolation, a mere adjustment to fit in, a slight dampening of aspiration. Yet, over time, these concessions accumulate, and one awakens to find that the bright potential once cherished has faded, leaving only a pale shadow of what might have been. The machinery of this collective force has perfected the art of turning excellence into selfishness, depth into pretension, independence into arrogance. It exploits our fundamental human craving for connection and belonging, weaponizing it against the very seeds of greatness within us. Those who dare to resist, who strive to transcend this homogenizing pull, encounter a carefully orchestrated backlash. At first, the pushback is subtle and cloaked in concern. You're pushing too hard. You're taking this too seriously. Maybe you're overthinking it. When these gentle nudges fail, the collective's tone hardens. You think you're superior. You're drifting away from reality. You're becoming unrecognizable to us. This resistance is no accident. It is essential to the survival of the collective's grip. Every individual who breaks free threatens the delicate balance of conformity. Mediocrity depends on universal participation. It cannot endure without the complicity of the many. To forge an unbreakable mind, one must cultivate the clarity to perceive these subtle manipulations, to strip away the masks worn by mediocrity. One must build resilience against the emotional pressures designed to pull you back into the fold. We now stand on the brink of a profound choice, one that will shape not only our personal destinies, but the very evolution of human consciousness. The path toward an unbreakable mind is not a fixed endpoint, but a continuous state of becoming. It is the persistent commitment to grow rather than settle, to create rather than consume, to truly live rather than merely exist. The world no longer needs another person molded to fit in perfectly. It calls for those who dare to stand apart, those willing to illuminate the darkness with their singular light. That choice lies before you now. Begin this journey today. Begin now. The unease others feel when confronted with an unbreakable mind is not fear of you. It is fear of what you represent. The possibility of transformation, the reminder that they too could rise above the ordinary. Step fully into that possibility. Become the force that unsettles complacency. The world demands nothing less than the fullest expression of your untamed potential. If this exploration has stirred something within you, share your thoughts in the comments, or simply your presence. Thank you for walking this path with us today. If this journey has stirred something within you, reflection, awareness, even clarity, know that you are not alone. Until next time, take care of your energy and honor your intuition.